Alright guys, today I wanted to go ahead and answer a question about should I get a older flagship phone or should I get a mid-range phone? Mid-range phones are typically in the same price or a little bit more expensive. I believe a mid-range phone can range from around like $450 to around maybe 300 bucks. Older flagship phones, reason why I focus on this on my channel a lot is because these phones are typically going for around the $200 to $300 price point. So you can find them for the same price, if not significantly cheaper, like literally around like 250 bucks. I have several phones, several Galaxy S10 phones going for 200, 230. They're very, very cheap these days. Now I have some mid-range phones that I actually do like, the A52 5G, the Redmi Note 11 Pro, which I'm going to make a few more videos about this phone. I feel like I haven't even covered it enough. And then the Poco X3 Pro, I absolutely love this phone. And I skipped out on the A53 5G. I was thinking about getting it, but I actually, after looking at it, it was a horrible phone. I think it was one of Samsung's worst releases this year. But let's go ahead and dive into it. So I'm going to give you guys 5 reasons why I would go with a mid-range phone. And then you guys can sort of chime in and let me know what do you guys think. So just using the Galaxy Note 10 Plus for example here, one of my favorite things about the mid-range phones is that the CPUs are typically more powerful than a mid-range phone. So take for instance the A52 5G, and even if we compare the A53 5G, which is much more expensive than this, typically going for like almost $400, and I think that one has a worse CPU. That's why I skipped out on it. You can see here are the Geekbench scores here. So you can see you typically will get a higher Geekbench score on your older flagship phones if it's an 855 chip, and even if you go with the V60's 865 chip, a V60 will cost you like 250 bucks, not even 300 bucks these days. Now you can see you get a much higher score. Now I tell people this for gaming performance as well. When we get into our gaming performance here, you will see a significant difference with graphics settings on here. So like I said, if you're somebody who plays PUBG competitively, Call of Duty, you're gonna want the best graphics settings and the best FPS. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys this. So typically mid-range phones like the Galaxy A52 5G, you can see I'm able to only play PUBG at smooth, and these are my max graphics, HD, HD high, so I can play at smooth ultra frames, which is fine. But remember, we're paying the same price, and if I'm really trying to play PUBG, I want to play at the best settings, right? So now I pull up a Galaxy Note 10 Plus, or it could be a S10 or just a regular S10e or whatever. You can see we're actually able to play at HDR Extreme. So and it makes a big difference because you get higher frame rates. So this is why I always say, if you're really serious about gaming and want the best gaming performance, you typically are going to want to go with a older flagship phone. And it's the same thing for the Redmi 11 Pro Plus. But phones like the Poco X3 Pro are an exception, even though with the new Poco X4 Pro, the chip is not as good as this one. But yeah, typically your older flagship phones, you're just going to get more power. The games are going to run smoother. The games are going to feel faster. So that's always one thing I like to tell people, is that your gaming experience is typically going to be better on an older flagship phone compared to a mid-range phone. Alright, so the next thing would be the price. So like I was saying, the prices of these phones are about the same, and you can find an older flagship phone for cheaper. So let's just type in, let's say the latest mid-range phone, right? The latest popular mid-range phone would be the Galaxy A53 5G. And they're having an Amazon Prime Day, but this phone is typically 450 bucks. It's 324 right now, but like I said, it's typically 450 bucks. And if we type in another, very popular phone, let's say the Pixel 5a, that's also another mid-range device here. Pixel 5a, that's like 500 bucks, right? But watch this. Type in Galaxy S10 Plus, Snapdragon 855 chip, You can find this easily $350. Now these are going to be renewed, refurbished, but you guys see me unbox these renewed, refurbished phones all the time. They look practically brand new. This is a renewed, refurbished phone. This is a renewed, refurbished phone. They're basically almost brand new. Galaxy Note 10 Plus. You can see the price. Still going to be cheaper, or if usually on the same part, you can find a Note 10 Plus for typically like $300 these days. Very, very cheap device. It's coming down in price as the year goes on. But as you guys can see, these older flagship phones, one of the best things about these phones is the price. So you can find these phones for cheaper than a mid-range phone and still get better performance, like I said, with the CPU and gaming and stuff like that. All right, next is going to be the hardware difference here. So as you can see with these mid-range phones here, they all have something in common. They all are typically plastic phones. This one I believe has glass back, but it's plastic rarely. And the Poco is just all plastic. Typically your mid-range phone is going to be a plastic build. It's not going to feel as premium as a glass and metal device here. So that's also one thing that I like, that these phones just feel more premium. They feel more expensive. They just feel more, like luxury, like in the hand. Now, the good thing about a plastic phone is that, if you drop this, it's plastic. It's not going to shatter like glass. So that's one thing. But like I said, I do like that premium, that, that heavy feeling. It just feels really nice in the hand. So that's also one thing that I really like as well too. And typically, most of these mid-range phones, they don't have IP68 dust and water resistant. They'll usually have some type of water resistant, but it's not going to be IP68 typically. You might be able to find some exceptions, but for the most part, that's not going to be the case. All of these older flagship phones have IP68 dust and water resistance, so you can drop them in the water, get them wet, and they won't, break immediately. All right, so also another thing is that you get basically all the features that you would find in like a S22 Ultra on these older flagship phones. So these phones are running One UI 4.1, Android 12, and you can see here on mid-range phones like Samsung's A52 and A53, there's no Samsung desktop support on here. There's no wireless desktop support, stuff like that. So that's also something that you would miss out on. And also, for people who want a Galaxy Note phone, you also get the stylus with this phone, which is really nice. So you get the stylus, all the software, people that want to do digital artwork. So like those additional little features, and also the wireless charging that these phones have, reverse wireless charging, that's something you won't find on a mid-range device most of the time. So you get these really nice premium luxury features for the same price, like I said, if not cheaper. Phones like the V60, these have dual screen case capability. It has the headphone jack with the quad DAC. It's got a lot of like these nice luxury features. That's also another thing to definitely think about. Now, the last thing is going to be the screens, right? So one thing that I love about these older flagship screens is that these phones have typically a 1440p panel, especially if you go with the Samsung device. It's a very sharp and nice panel. So one awesome thing about mid-range phones these days is they do have the 120 hertz, which, obviously older flagship phones don't have, but these have the 1440p or 2K resolution. So I'm a big fan of like high resolution screens and stuff like that. So it really comes down to your personal preference. I do like 120 hertz. I wish older flagship phones had them. Like, if you want an older flagship phone with a high refresh rate, I would look at a OnePlus 7 Pro or a OnePlus 8 Pro or something like that. They're typically still around the same price. But the screens on these phones still look so good. It's high PPIs, bright. They just look really great. Even the Note 10 Plus still has a slimmer screen to body ratio. I think even the S10, right? The S10 looks like it has a slimmer screen to body ratio as well. Yeah. So I just like the screens on these older phones as well too. Very high resolution. And I think everything else on these phones are pretty evenly matched. Battery life is pretty much the same. I don't see, these mid-range phones typically don't have that much better battery life than the older flagship phones in my experience. Also, the cameras on these mid-range phones, I think they have higher resolution lenses, but as far as like, just taking shots, they pretty much are on par with each other. Even though these are newer phones, they're still pretty much on par with each other. Yeah, so I just really like these older flagship phones. As you guys can see, my main thing would be the CPUs are typically better. The build quality is going to be better. You get more features, right? Yeah, these newer phones, the newer mid-range phones, they do have like these crazy high resolution cameras, 108 megapixel, 108 megapixel lens on this one. But like I said, these phones have a lot to offer as well too. So I'm curious to know you guys' opinions on this. So be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.